So we've got so far that the point of these teachings is to stop the suffering. The point of these teachings is not for you to fall in love with the teachings or fall in love with the teacher. That is not the point of the teachings. That might happen or might not happen. But that's not the reason for the teachings. The point of the teachings is for the suffering to end. And the teachings can be very powerful in that. But what the teachings and the teacher is saying is that you don't need teachings. You don't need a teacher. You don't need these meetings. You don't need this. You're already totally whole and complete. But the seeking is there. And if you're a seeker, the seeking is there. Why? Well, you're seeking, first of all, you're seeking for experience or knowledge. So two broad categories. You basically seek, and as Arvind said, you're seeking to end your suffering. That's what you're really wanting. And then the reason the seeking's there is because of a more fundamental belief in I am the body mind. I am the body. I am limited in some way. Why does that give rise to seeking? Because once you consider yourself limited, then you're subject, when you consider yourself to be the body-mind entity, rather, you're subject to birth, death, and everything in between, suffering, old age, frailty. And then you perceive other people as being body-minds, and you perceive them as potentially suffering and being vulnerable and subject to birth, aging, disease, death. And this creates suffering. So we naturally want to stop this kind of disease, suffering, death process for ourselves and for the people we care about around us. And we strive to control things. And this is a lot of work. And when things go our way, we feel happy. When things don't go our way, we feel unhappy, right? So this teaching is sometimes called liberation, sometimes called self-realization. The end goal of this teaching, it's sometimes called liberation, sometimes called self-realization, sometimes called enlightenment, sometimes called nirvana, sometimes called finding the kingdom of God or heaven upon earth. All these different words we can use. But what we're really looking for is an end of suffering. So if we dissolve the root cause of suffering, which is the belief in I am the body mind, then everything else that comes after that will also eventually go. This root belief, I am the body mind, I call ego. I don't mean the natural functioning of the mind that can do things in the world. So if you need to wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning, and you set your alarm for 8 o'clock in the morning, and you brush your teeth, and and then you put your clothes on, and you have breakfast, and you get out the house, and you get public transport, you get in your car. That's all natural functioning of the psychological mind. That's not a problem. I don't call that ego. Okay. Ego, I'm saying, is the identification that fundamentally I'm the body mind. Now, I've got a cup here. Yeah. Now imagine you are each holding a cup. And it was your cup. Okay, you can say that's my cup. Yeah. But is the cup you? No, you don't confuse yourself as being the cup. In Vedanta speak, in Vedanta language, they would say you don't identify the self as the cup. If you identify the self as the cup, that means you're identifying yourself as being the cup. But naturally, you don't identify yourself as being the cup. You know that's not you. So in Vedanta language, they'll say you have not identified the self, meaning you, with the cup. But our problem is that we have identified the self with the body, or the self with the body mind. So all the practices, all we have to do is just remove that belief. And that's the point of the teachings. All the questions and all the concerns come from or come after already having had that belief. So I'm going to use the cup now, just because it's here. It's the only prop I've got to hand. I'm going to use the cup now in a different way. So to illustrate a different example, imagine now, every time I hold this cup, this is me believing I'm the body mind. And if I put this cup down, there, put it down now, hands empty, I'm no longer believing I'm the body mind. And as soon as I pick it up, now I'm believing the body mind. You see, that's a different analogy we're now using the cup. To ask questions about spirituality, about seeking, about ending suffering, I have to pick up the cup first. Only when I consider myself a body mind do I have spiritual problems. So the teaching is, be still. Be still is signified by this. This cup, I now put that cup down. There we go. Oh, but I want to know about enlightenment. I want to know about liberation. Oh, I picked up the cup already, you see? It's already been picked up. Is it conscious? Tracy asked the question, is it conscious or is it subconscious? It's subconscious. We do it automatically without realizing. We've already identified as the body and mind. So Ramana says, a spiritual seeker comes to Ramana and he can see this. This is what he sees when they're talking to him. He sees somebody holding a cup. He sees somebody taking themselves to be a body and mind. When you're not holding the cup, it's very easy to see when someone else is holding a cup. There's a clarity there which just can see that. And so, but if everyone you know is holding a cup, you don't even notice it. So if you're holding the cup all your life, if you're taking yourself to be the body and mind all your life, and everyone else is as well, you don't even notice this thing. This thing is just sort of hidden somewhere. You don't even notice it as being a thing. You just think it's normal. It's only when you let go of this and you see everyone else is sort of clinging to their cup, and protecting it and worrying about it and like stroking it and like, oh yeah, you think this is really bizarre. This is weird. What's going on here? And this is for me where the desire to teach and share came from. Do you see people basically going, oh, and I'm really finding it really difficult and it's really tough here. Don't know what's going on and this kind of stuff. And you're thinking, what the hell are they doing with this? Why are they protecting themselves in this way? And then you realize, oh, I used to do that. That's what I've done all my life and it's causing them suffering. So you try and point it out. You see, this is how it happens. Or one way it can happen. I think that's pretty much how it happens. So Ramana says, well, what are you? Who are you? And you're like, and this enables someone to put the cup down because you're getting to the root core of the belief that's causing suffering, which is this problem of identity. So you've got this problem of action, which is that you're seeking, and that seeking is rooted in suffering. Okay, so you've got this problem of experience, which is suffering, which creates action, which is seeking and into suffering. You're suffering, which is an experience, and you're seeking an end of suffering. So there's an activity to end the suffering you're experiencing. So you've got a problem of activity and experience. And that's based on a deeper problem of identity, wrong identity, misidentity. You know those detective things? It's a case of mistaken identity. This is a case of mistaken identity. So Ramana's question, who am I? The reason it's such an important thing is because it strikes the heart of the problem, which is wrong identity, mistaken identity. Okay, I know you're all muted. I'm just going to ask you, I'm going to say the heart of the problem is mistaken identity. I just want you to repeat that back to me. What's the heart of the problem? Stay muted. Mistaken identity. Just say it out loud to yourself. What's the root of the problem? Mistaken identity. And that gives rise to a problem of poor experience. So you feel you suffer. Okay. So that gives rise to suffering. Correct? Can you say that with me? That gives rise to suffering. And then that suffering then gives rise to seeking the end of suffering. That suffering gives rise to seeking. What does that suffering give rise to? Seeking. So he said the principal means for liberation is the question, who am I, which strikes at the root problem, identity. Can anyone tell me, you can unmute yourself and tell me, what was the second way that Ramana said that you could attain liberation? One was through self-inquiry, which is the question, who am I? Can anyone tell me?
Devotion.
Devotion? Not quite, but it's linked.
Be still.
Be still, not quite, but again, it's linked. There's a specific phrase, a term he used. Again, it could be that, and he has said that all those three answers are correct. Devotion, what do you say? Devotion, be still, meditation. Yeah, they're all correct, but that's not the one that he says principally. He usually puts two things together when he says they're two things. Anyone else? Okay. So the two-way means he says for self-realization are: one, self-inquiry, which is who am I? Second one is self-surrender. He says these are the two ways you can end suffering. These are two ways you can realize yourself. One is self-inquiry, the other one is surrender. So let's say those to get together as well. You can stay muted. The first means to end suffering or for liberation is self-inquiry. First means is self-inquiry. The second means is surrender or self-surrender. Now you can see how meditation is linked to surrender, perhaps. You can see how be still is linked to surrender, perhaps. And you can see how devotion is linked to surrender as well, perhaps. Yeah. Now, can I ask you something? If the question, who am I, attacks this case of mistaken identity, which is the root problem, what aspect of this suffering mechanism? So we've got the suffering mechanism, which is we misidentify as the body mind, then we suffer, we have poor, which is experiential suffering, and then we seek, which is activity. That's our kind of mechanism of suffering, which we call ignorance. What aspect of that mechanism does surrender tackle? Can anyone unmute themselves and tell me?
I am the doer, the ego.
Yeah. So do you remember the way I phrased it? I said you have a case of mistaken identity, then you suffer, and then you seek to end the suffering. So you've got a problem with identity, then a problem with experience, then a problem with activity, which is the seeking. What's surrender doing? Do you know? Whereabouts is it interfering? Seeking, yeah. So what surrender is doing, you're seeking. You're desiring the end of suffering, which is what seeking is. And surrender is stopping that, isn't it? It's like, okay, I'm just going to surrender now. What will be is what's going to be. I'll just let what will be. You know, whatever happens is what happens. What do they say? Que sera, sera. Is that right? Whatever will be, will be. Que sera, sera. Okay. Yeah, you don't want me to sing more, trust me. If you get the questions wrong, and I've told you the answers already, I might start singing, guys. So concentrate. Okay, so do you see that? Surrender is attacking that not the primary problem, but the secondary problem, which is why he didn't recommend it as much. Now, can you see that these are the two wings of the teaching? Yeah, you see how it fits together? Okay. Any questions?